I'm Mirabai Paula STARR, and I first moved up to LAMA when I was 14, so that would have been 1975. And so I was here at 75 and 76, but then many summers after that. Moving to LAMA at such a young age really informed not only my spiritual life, but my entire life. I felt that the face of God was everywhere, shining from all the world's great spiritual traditions. And so everywhere I turned, there it was, emanating in the sacred languages of every one of the world's wisdom traditions. Everything I do now as a writer and a speaker and a teacher is informed by what I learned at LAMA. It's like the seeds that were planted at LAMA created the garden. That's my entire life. And so I now sow those seeds wherever I go. So I teach people Shabbat when I'm with a group of Christian clergy people doing a renewal retreat, say, and then they take that away and they teach it to their congregations. And I sing the name of Allah among Hindus. And so now that becomes part of the spiritual practice when they come together with their communities. And so there's this beautiful cross-pollination that happens in my work, and that's spreading from community to community, that of course all began with LAMA. Sometimes I think people think I made it all up, but it all started here.
What do you see as LAMA's most vital contribution to the world?
That question almost makes me cry. And it's a question that brings me to tears almost every day. The division that I see in the world makes less and less sense to me, given how interconnected we've also recognized ourselves to be by virtue even just of communications, that we all have easy access to the simple truth that there's only one of us and that we are all interconnected. And so LAMA sings this song of unity, and that song is resounding through the world at the same time that the world feels more divided than ever before, and the people on the margins are suffering more profoundly than ever before. This unitive song is more important than ever. And I have to say, I see an equal measure of those unitive voices everywhere I turn, from the streets to the monastic settings, from the very young to the elderly. People are singing more loudly the song of unity than the song of separation, but boy, they feel like they're neck and neck sometimes. And so this is the place where spirituality and political consciousness come together and must come together. There's no separation between how, as all the wisdom traditions have taught us, right, between how we treat one another and how we treat Mother Earth and the inner life that we cultivate. In other words, we, yes, must cultivate that inner life, but only so that we can offer the fruits of that harvest to the hungry world.
What do you envision happening for LAMA in the next 50 years?
Well, Murshid Sam, one of our great teachers here at LAMA, I feel like we have two primary root teachers at LAMA, Murshid Samuel Lewis and Neem Karoli Baba Maharaji. And they both taught us and taught the world the same deep truth. Murshid called it the meeting of the ways, and Maharaji used the Hindi phrase sab ek, all is one. And this is what I think LAMA is going to stand for more. It always has stood for the meeting of the ways, for sab ek, all is one. But I think as we go forward into the next 5 decades, that recognition, again, of the unity of all beings and our unity, not only with each other, but with the earth itself and with all of reality, is going to be more and more important. And so that LAMA will be, I think, a beacon in the world for the meeting of the ways, for deep respect for all spiritual traditions, but not just respect. I'm not interested in respecting or tolerating a Muslim or a Jain. I am interested in entering into the heart of Islam, or entering into the beating Jewish heart or the heart of Christ, and being transformed by that encounter. And so I think what LAMA provides in that way, not just a place to honor the traditions, not just a place to study the traditions and understand them, but a place to experience the living blood of each of these great wisdom traditions. This is going to be vital, life-giving elixir in the years to come. Learning to live with each other in community is one of the hardest paths there is, and if we can do that, if we can show up with the truth of who we are and what we bring to the table, recognizing that we always probably assume that we're imperfect, or if we're not noticing our own imperfections, we're probably noticing the log in each other's eyes, that somehow living in community becomes a crucible for making peace on earth. And so for future Lama beings, I would say, show up for that transformational fire. Learn to love each other. Learn to love yourself by virtue of the relationship with the other. And you will be able to bring the healing balm that the world is so thirsty for. So when I was around 20, I went to Spain, and it was my junior year in college, and I did a semester in Spain studying Spanish literature, and I encountered the poetry of San Juan de la Cruz, St. John of the Cross, who was the 16th century Spanish mystic who coined the term dark night of the soul, which is all about the transformational fire of suffering, of emptiness, of dropping down into the holy space of not knowing. After the Lama fire, I led the first Shabbat off the mountain when Lama refugees were gathering in Arroyo Hondo, where I grew up. And as I began to lead the Shabbat, I suddenly understood that we, Lama beings, even though I wasn't living here anymore, once a Lama being, always a Lama being, and I was a neighbor, we were living in that dark night of the soul space that this great mystical master, San Juan de la Cruz, had identified. We were in that stripped down, burnt to the ground, empty place. And into that open container, the sacred was pouring. Even at the same time that we felt so shattered, we were being filled with grace. And our only task was to allow ourselves to know nothing.
My name is SAKINA von BRIESEN. I lived here at LAMA from 1974 to 1977. I came here with a question, and which was a way to find a workable life. I had a deep spiritual practice, but didn't know how to really live in the world, what my place was, what my skills were. And I certainly found that at LAMA by being thrown into lots of situations where I was tested and forced to come up with skills and ways of being that I don't think I ever would have encountered otherwise in my life. I think being in a community of like-minded people was huge for me. And I loved the spontaneity at LAMA, that you could just try things. You could be someone who you had never been before, and maybe that was a good fit, maybe it wasn't. I also was married here. Our son was born here. And so it was and I became a stepmother here of 3 stepchildren. So it became a huge, it was just a gigantic shift in my life. Yeah.
How might your life have been different if you hadn't found LAMA?
That's very hard to imagine. The skills and especially interpersonal skills that I discovered here have been so central to my life since LAMA. I started 2 different organizations, a women's singing group and a Japanese tea association, and based both of them on a LAMA model, even though the people in the groups didn't know that. And they both worked really well with that invocation and kind of style where everyone was welcome to take part. And the leaders were meant to be responsive to each person in the group. So there was a kind of caring and family feeling that we created together.
What do you see as LAMA's most vital contribution to the world?
I think having a place like LAMA where people can come as I did. I think most people who come to LAMA have a question or have something in their life that isn't working. And maybe they don't know what it is even, but they know it's just not working. And they need a place of refuge from the world, the larger, more confusing world of having to earn enough money and how does that relate to who you really are. And the world is not a welcoming place. It's not an easy place. So this is an opportunity to find more of who we are and also how to work with other people. So yeah, and when I'm not here, sometimes I lose track of how valuable LAMA is. And when I come back here and see the transformations happening in the residents and even people who just come up for a couple of days, just the ability to breathe and become larger, it's just invaluable. And I think that's why we all keep coming back.
What do you envision happening for LAMA in the next 50 years?
Well, I feel a kind of detachment, actually, from that kind of vision. I feel that all organizations have a life cycle, and LAMA's been through many of those cycles already and survived and come back to thrive. I think maybe being part of the community by fundraising after the fire has given me some detachment to LAMA surviving in some kind of long-term way. I think at some point it will have fulfilled its purpose, or the world will have changed so much that it's no longer sustainable. So I say hooray if it continues and hooray if it doesn't.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future LAMA beings?
This has been such an interesting time of both introspection and seeing the changes in each of us over these last decades and decades. I think when I lived here, I was completely here, and it seemed very scary to leave after 3 years. And it did take us a while to get our feet back on the ground in the larger world, and that's okay. That's part of the process, of leaving. It's kind of like leaving graduate school. even if you're only here for a summer. You know, you've become deeply involved in something that it's hard to find in the larger world. And I think just when it's time to leave, look for like-minded people. Look for people with open hearts, and set yourself there. Yeah.
Do you have any anecdotes that you would care to share about your experience at LAMA?
Well, I was invited here to help produce a book, and I came for 3 weeks. I was told, well, we'll be done in 3 weeks, and it didn't happen for 6 months. So I ended up staying for 3 years, and yeah, it just, the stories could go on and on. I'm just very grateful to the foundation and how people took me into their hearts, and we became family. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Rameshwar Das. I first visited LAMA in 1970 in the summer, and I came here with my old friend Krishna Das, and we were traveling cross country. And Krishna Das had been here, but it was my first visit. And then subsequently I was here a number of times with Ram Das and various of the crew from the India times. Feeling of community at LAMA when I first came here was just remarkable, and I remember Asha was like the mama bear at that point, and her kids were still pretty small. It was a very unusual sense of spiritual community that I hadn't encountered before, although we had had some kind of encampments with Ram Das before that time. This was a really established community by that point, and it was profoundly beautiful being up here, both for the people who were here, and the place itself just seemed to hold a lot of spiritual Shakti, or whatever you want to call it.
How might your life have been different if you hadn't found LAMA?
Well, I think LAMA gave me a perspective on satsang and community and how to go about being with different teachers in different circumstances and taking what you needed and leaving the rest sometimes. I had the good fortune to be with Sufi Sam during the making of a film called Sunseed out in California, and to go dancing with him in the mission. And I realized the force that he became here and in other places, and then there were other teachers who came through here, and it was always a great joy to feel the way that LAMA brought people and different traditions together. I think that the sense of bringing together the different traditions and establishing practices for people. I've never been a highly disciplined practitioner in my spiritual journey, which has now spanned close to 50 years, and the introduction to practices and to different ways of celebrating the spirit, I think, was a really wonderful aspect of being with LAMA and LAMA beings.
What do you envision happening for LAMA in the next 50 years?
I see the people, the kids that I know, they seem like kids now, but I was the same age as they are when they first got into spiritual practice or onto a spiritual path. And I think that the offering that Lama brings to people to go on retreat, to find their way inward in whatever way they need to go about it, and to offer the resources of teachings and teachers in this world that has increasing pressures toward separation and kind of disconnection. I think that that's a great gift that Lama offers in a quiet way, and that's often the best way. So I feel that the contribution that Lama is making to the culture is almost a statement of purpose for the next generation. And the cultural transfers that have come through Lama over the years have now become enmeshed in the society itself. When you think of yoga on every street corner and the ways that spiritual language has entered into our cultural discourse, Lama is really still a strong outpost that speaks to those questions that especially young people really are working with. I have a son who's now in his early 20s, and he's kind of at the same place I was, but the tools and the concepts are out there in ways that I never experienced, and Lama is a repository for that. I think what Lama has to share for young people also is the sense of community and love that can be created between people, that can be communicated through being together and practicing together and working together and living together in a simple way. So I think that those qualities are transferable and important for young people to get a taste of, even if they don't come here and live for years at a time. That sense of oneness that the Lamas always represented, the toward the one piece, is really a good gift. I think that I would like to just say thank you to Lama for my own experiences here, which have been relatively brief but important to me, and the sense of community that Lama spreads, not just within the actual Lama community, but out into the world as a model for other people to live with. Ram Ram.
My name's Surya. First name's Elaine, although that's not really ever known. I started coming up here in the mid-'80s. I think first time I was here in '83. I moved up here in '89 and stayed just through the fire, so through '96. I was back in '98 for another round of being on staff, and I was also a trustee for a number of years. And that pretty much lasted through about 2010, at which point I bought a piece of land lower down on the mountain, built my own house, and did that for a number of years, and have recently started reconnecting as a neighbor, coming up to help out a lot. It brought community into my life, and it opened me to an alternative lifestyle, a way that I could live in connection with the land, with other human beings, and to bring my spiritual values to the core and to live from that place. You know, I can imagine myself, if I hadn't found this place, it was like many people say, it's the last resort for me. And I can imagine my life would have been very lonely, being very depressed, feeling like I didn't fit in anywhere, because my values are not what we would call worldly. I'm interested in living a good life, not working for a living. So this place has really supported me in being able to put that value, the quality of life, forward.
What do you see as LAMA's most vital contribution to the world?
All of us LAMA beings, I would say, in the work of transforming the world one heart at a time, we've done a lot of work. That the essence of the program, which I see is carried through all my different years, is that it's about people learning to work together with people who are very different than they are, who they would not necessarily choose as friends. And coming to that place where they can really drop into accepting diversity and working it out on a very human level. To come to a place of agreement, to come together to get a task done, that sort of thing. Seems to have continued through all the generations.
What do you envision happening for LAMA in the next 50 years?
Well, what I see going backwards that's continual is staying on this revolutionary edge. That before there were retreat centers, LAMA started doing retreats. And then when that became a real common thing, we moved on to the next thing, and then the next thing. And so it's my hope and my prayer that each generation of LAMA residents will kind of update us to what's current, so that we can always stay on that progressive edge and be bringing into the world, in a sense, having a cradle for what's next to come into the world.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future LAMA beings?
Love your neighbors, breathe a lot, stay in your heart, and look at your own issues. I think we're top of the list. It's almost as if we live in almost an indigenous lifestyle here, where we're not caught into we got to make more money to buy food or to get ahead or so much of that. So to just really appreciate the preciousness of the rusticness of this place, how close we live to nature. Well, I hope it comes across being here at the spring that there's a magic quality to this piece of land, and that people remember to receive from that well while they're here on the land. And to, I want to say, take a little piece of LAMA with them into the world, to carry a seed of hope, a seed of community, a seed of heartfelt connection, and to do what they can in the world to plant that seed and make it grow, and to share it with others, to realize that we become living transmitters after our time here, and that when you're in the pot being cooked, there's a reason they call us LAMA beings, there's an analogy that for every year that you live here, you do 7 years of growth. And so it doesn't always necessarily seem so great when you're here and living here. You're often like over your edge, or seeing your edge, or cursing your rough places. But to really give yourself permission to do that work and let it be primary. Because once you're done with the course and you go out into the world, those are the things that you'll carry with you, and those are the places where you can transmit LAMA to others and really be a support to creating this kind of community on a global level. We've got a really young group here now, and there's a sense that they don't want to hear what happened before, you know, that real don't tell me how to do it kind of thing. And So I just want to say to all future Lama beings that we did it for you, to keep this place going so that more people could have this incredible experience that's been life-changing for so many of us. And to find the space to have a little gratitude. And appreciation. And to remember that we love you so much, whether we know you or not. And that we are so grateful that you are willing to come and enjoy this space.
I'm ZULEIKHA, and my story of Lama is a little different than most people. In a way, everyone's is different. I never lived at Lama during any period of time. I came to Lama during every period of time. And so I would come up here to teach, and I would come up here to visit and teach and participate. I came very often on weekends because I moved to Santa Fe in the mid-'80s and '90s. I think I came every other weekend for long periods of time, and then of course not in winter. I've taught at Lama for years. I'm a story dancer, and I led women's retreats, many, with Asha, without Asha. We had 100 women on the mountain at a time, doing all kinds of things.
In the arc of your life, what did Lama mean to you?
Well, I would say in the arc of my life, what does Lama mean to me? Because I think this is a present, even if somebody's going to watch this in 50 years, Lama Foundation is a place where people can be in freedom of the spirit. If you learn what your spirit feels like, you can live in it freely here. There isn't a need to dress in a certain way, to act in a certain way. In my life, I work all over the world, and so I learn customs of people because that's the correct and wonderful thing to do. When you come here, you can explore what it means to find your own custom. It's very important to find your own custom. Last night I said that one of the meanings of religion is to find your own origin, and I think that that's something that you can do at Lama Foundation. My background was that I grew up in the Sufi family in San Francisco, so I was a kid of the kids of Murshid Sam Lewis and of Inayat Khan. And so when I first came to Lama, it was with a man named Vashisht, who was a student of Sam Lewis. And Sam Lewis, Murshid Sam, had just been buried at what we now are calling the Maqbara Dargah. And so we were the first people to take a retreat up there in separate tents when the grave itself was just pine needles. And so he wanted me to come here and see this place, and so that's how I came. And so after that, everyone kept inviting me to come and teach here. The early group, Surya Das and Fusako, were doing a play by Nanao Sakaki, the famous Japanese poet, and they wanted me to play the white crane that was in the... I had many offshoots of being at Lama. They came to the Bay Area, I came here, but I seemed to always come here and dance. And when I dance here, I think it's one of the best dance studios in the whole world, and that's one thing I wanted to say, is because it's so high up, and the dome is so big, and the mountain is so big, and when you take retreats here, spiritual retreats, which I've done a lot of, it's always informed my movement and my dance and the things that I do all over the world with people, with women, with trafficked women, with marginalized society, with cancer patients in slums of India. I feel that this place allows me to touch the core of my own spirit in the freedom that I feel here, and so I wanted to be able to say that. That's one thing that how Lama informs your life. Like the word inform is a funny word because it means inform. In other words, how does your life take form? So I wouldn't say that Lama is my life. I haven't been like that here. And yet, all the zikrs that I've been privileged to lead here and the songs I can sing and singing here, it forces you to be in a kind of truth that I think is America. The real America has to do with freedom of spirit and truth and clarity of purpose and wanting that for all beings. And I think that since I ever took that first retreat at the Maqbara that time ago, I had this feeling, and I still have it to this day, that this place is going to be a refuge and a place of pilgrimage for people in the time to come. And actually what I feel is that, and I felt this from the very first time I came here, I was a teenager, so that we are the great, however many grandparents of this thing, this freedom of spirit to come to the West, to be re-emerging in the West. It's always been here in the native people, and we know what happened in their societies. And those of us who are mongrel-like, we're all from mixed families. So Lama has been a place where we could kind of learn to understand our own sense of origin in our beings, not like if my family was from Russia or China or something. Those are important too, but something else is important here, and I think that in time to come, this is going to be a place of pilgrimage for people to get to remember that there's hope, to remember that there is joy and that there is goodness, that there is a place in nature, like when you're a woman and you travel around alone like I do, to come to this place and play dress up and wear whatever you want and feel good because your mirror is the earth and the sky and the sun and the beautiful trees and people. It's very unconfining, and I think that is a very important gift that Lama has to give to the world. I'm sure there's lots of other ones, but most people will say about those. Being a dancer person, I know that when I teach here with people or share this feeling, people become enormous, like you just become rooted in the earth and the sky. You feel enormous. You feel like your spirit is free, and I think that's a gift that Lama has to share. I think that many, many people are going to come here for pilgrimage. I think that Mershid Sam Lewis, the gifts that he gave to the world are pretty much still unknown. They're going to get more known. The ability to become yourself, to watch your breath, to concentrate, to feel your purpose at the same time as you're cooking, that you don't have to sit down and be quiet to do all those things. I think he was a forerunner of putting together contemplation and concentration and joy and activity, and that this thing of being a Western person means that you can be in activity. You don't have to be somber and serious. You can talk even, you can have fun, and you can watch your breath, and you can pay attention. And I think that that's something that people feel when they come here, and that it's just going to grow. Many people are going to come here. That's what I think. And they're going to put their head on this mountain, and we all know that you have these ideas when you come here, and the mountain, that's what people say. Sometimes I don't like that, but it's actually true. The earth here, the mountain redirects whatever you were thinking you were going to do. You want to be this, you want to be that, you want to perform this, you want to be seen like this, and something happens when you come here. It's bigger than us. And I think for those of us who don't have a classical culture, or even if you do come from a classical culture, to be in a space where something is bigger than your personality, ego structure, so that your ego structure can learn to feel its goodness. I think that's what happens here, in lots of different ways. I'm speaking in a certain dimension, I guess you would say.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
I think everyone has so much wisdom to share, you know. But to me, this sound that you hear right now, the sound of the wind here, always has been so refreshing and so comforting and so holding that I think whoever comes here in the future, they'll have their own experiences of probably things that we're experiencing right now in their way at that time, because you know, this is the first time I've come to Lama where I have my cell phone and it works. So I found that to be really amazing. And who knows in 50 years what people are going to have and how it's going to work. But this place, this earth that has been sanctified by so many traditions, every kind known and unknown, really, that it's safe to come here. I think that's what everyone will feel from now and always.
I'm Natalie Goldberg, and I lived at Lama in 1974 on the side of Lama Mountain in a teepee from May through September. Lama meant everything to me. It changed my life. I had an awakening experience in an Albuquerque public school classroom. I was a teacher. I had no control over the class. And suddenly, right in the middle of it, with the kids running around, I had a deep awakening experience. And I didn't know what to do with it. And all my friends had never heard of anything like that. I had no idea what to do with it. Someone said to me, go to Lama. So I came on an open house on a Sunday, and I'm walking up from the parking lot, and Asha Durkee, this big, tall woman, who it turns out started Lama, was wearing a white dress and bare feet, and she looked down at me and said, what are you doing here? In her usual way. And I said, the Garden of Eden opened in my heart. And she said, you have to find a practice to water it. And then she walked on. And that was my beginning. My life would have been completely different if I hadn't found Lama. Lama is the first place where I sat meditation in the prayer room. And when I sat, I thought, this is what I'm looking for. This is it. And I've followed it ever since. I've been a very serious Zen practitioner for 40 years. And out of that, I've created writing practice, which is deeply rooted in watching the mind for 2,000 years. And I wrote a book called Writing Down the Bones, which, you know, changed the way people saw writing in this country. And I've just continued because it's a practice. You don't just do a hit and then go on. I continue the practice. I'm just finishing my 16th book. So Lama lit that. I think Lama's most important contribution to the world is the fact that it brings in all different kinds of religions. So if you stay here, you get a taste of all different kinds, Sufism, you know, just all of them, even Catholicism, Christianity, Judaism, and that is so important, Islam, because then once you leave, you can't have a prejudice toward them. You know in your heart that they're all one. And I'm a very serious Zen student, and that's really my world. But in the back of my mind, I know there are other things. And that was very important to me.
What do you envision happening for Lama in the next 50 years?
I've never envisioned anything for 50 years, what could happen to Lama, partially because I didn't realize I was growing old. I thought I'd be here forever and we'd all be here and we'd just go on enjoying Lama. But I think things are getting hard right now and very contracted. And this is a place like it was for me 35, 40 years ago, a place I could go to find something else in my being.
What stands out for you as something important to share with future Lama beings?
I think that I still think sitting is very important. Meditation, just simply sitting. You don't need any equipment. Just watch and study your own mind. You know, I've been here on this wonderful reunion, 50-year reunion, and I've heard the words blessing, heart, and love nonstop. In Zen, you don't hear any of that. In Zen, you wear black, you don't look at each other, you don't talk to each other, but it blooms, but it's never said. And I think that I teach people, shut up and do it. Just shut up. So I'd like a little more Zen here.
Are there any anecdotes of your time at Lama that you would care to share, at times that were enlightening to you or warmed your heart or otherwise?
Well, I remember I was an English teacher and I was teaching social studies down in Albuquerque, and I just knew nothing about this kind of world. And I walked into the dome and there was Baba Haridas, who hadn't spoken at that time in 30 years and wrote on a blackboard. He was from India. And Ram Dass writes about him in Be Here Now. And I walked in and he immediately pointed at me and said, "Who are you? What do you do?" And I said, "I'm an English teacher." And I felt so square. You know, everybody was really wild then. And he wrote, "Will you teach me English?" And it was so sweet. We all laughed. And I felt so accepted. I didn't have to be anyone different than I was. It was very profound. I just want to leave with practice. It's serious. We are going to die. I came here 50 years later at the reunion. People have really grown old. We are really marching out. Time keeps moving. And so practice. It's important. Please do that. Okay, thank you.